Good morning to everyone here at this Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government. In 46 days, Americans will go to the polls for one of the most consequential elections of our lifetimes. Americans will decide the composition of Congress, as well as the next President of the United States. And then, prayerfully, this Select Committee will be over, because the purpose of this committee will no longer be necessary. And what was that purpose? Well, it's what I said almost 2 years ago: to test out conspiracy theories, prop up those stories that the far right wishes to push into the American psyche, and to lay the groundwork for a dictatorial government led by Donald Trump. Now, immediately, you'll hear moans of disapproval, and X, formerly called Twitter, is going to call me a racist. They're going to call me a disrespectful black bitch because I have said words against the chairman, my white male counterpart on this committee. I'm a tool of the woke agenda. I've heard it, I've read it all, as well as so many of my colleagues that are here. More moderate individuals will say I'm being an alarmist and that there's no way America becomes a dictatorship. We're just pointing out how the federal government comes after conservatives. But in the 2 years that we've been doing this Groundhog Day over and over and over again, there has been no evidence to show that the federal government, and in particular the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, or the Department of Justice has been wholly weaponized against the right. The same way my Republican colleagues have not been able to show that Joseph Biden has committed impeachable offenses or that Secretary Mayorkas committed any high crimes and misdemeanors. And they knew they never could because, as Biggie says, it was just a dream. We've had hearings and over about the federal government, again, the FBI and DOJ in particular, and the White House trying to stop free speech on social media platforms. Other committees, along with this one, have spent millions of taxpayer dollars interviewing senior social media executives, and particularly those that set the parameters of content moderation, to say that the sites unfairly come after conservatives. When what we have learned is that those executives have in the past tried to provide users with corrections to disinformation and misinformation, which may create health risks, put people in danger, or may have placed falsely by the enemies of our country to try to sow election disinformation and false narratives to weaken our democratic election system. This committee has been used to weaken that system, following the desires of far-right conspiracy theorists, and in particular, Elon Musk, to allow them free reign on these platforms. American civilians have been harassed, threatened, doxxed. And Mr. Musk, since you think tweeting or Xing or whatever it is you do on your platform about me is going to scare me to be quiet, you obviously don't know what I'm made of. Generations of individuals who have fought for me to have the ability to say what I want to say, to speak the truth. You forget that this is not pre-1990s apartheid South Africa, the country of your birth. This is America. And there are more of us Americans that love our diversity, our rule of law, than there are of you who would like us all to be sycophants to your ego. The outcome of hearings of this committee have supported my claim that from the very beginning of the creation of this select subcommittee, that this has been the gaslighting to the nth degree, a tremendous projection of the highest order, that the evidence is the words of their leader, their would-be Führer, Donald Trump, and Project 2025, a 900-page manifesto of a transformed America. Donald Trump has spoken his intentions out loud, and his followers were so bold as to put it in a document with his knowledge to outline how they would create a state to serve the interests of a few at the expense of the many. Trump, himself a convicted felon, has pledged that on day one of, this is a quote, on day one of my new administration, I will direct the DOJ to investigate every radical DA and attorney general for their illegal, racist enforcement of the law, end quote. He has said that undocumented immigrants are, quote, poisoning the blood of our country, end quote, language echoing the rhetoric of Nazi Germany, and has promised to invoke the Alien Enemies Act to, quote, carry out the largest domestic deportation operation in American history. Who would defend his use of the law for that purpose? The Department of Justice. And he has promised, Trump's words, to stock the federal government, including the Department of Justice and FBI, with appointees loyal to him and only him. Not to the Constitution, which he has separately said could be revoked because if it doesn't do what he wants it to do, who will carry out his every order without question. The how to do these threats have been flushed out by individuals absolutely loyal to Trump. How do we know that? Because the vast majority of individuals who worked on his cabinet have stated they look forward to working with him again and instituting Project 2025. Russ Vought, former director of OMB and policy director for the Republican National Convention, wrote the details for the consolidation of executive power in Project 2025. Stephen Miller, a former advisor to Trump, who has crafted the most sweeping immigration agenda, has been an advisor of Project 2025 through his dark money group, American First Legal. We remember Stephen Miller, the architect of Donald Trump's most inhumane border policies and the champion of the racist Great Replacement conspiracy theory. That's Stephen Miller. In April of 2022, Trump spoke with the Heritage Foundation after meeting with its head, Kevin Roberts, and said that the group would, quote, lay the groundwork and detailed plan for exactly what our movement will do, end quote. Voila, Project 2025, the conservative blueprint for remaking the federal government if Donald Trump is reelected. Trump's words and Project 2025 are exactly what the Democratic members of this committee said back when this committee started that their leader, Trump, was trying to do. The mandate of Project 2025 for leadership directs the Department of Justice, which seems to be the main focus of so many of our hearings, along with the FBI, to fill the department with as many political appointees as opposed to career civil servants as possible, especially in the Civil Rights Division, the FBI, and the Executive Office of Immigration Review. Initiate legal action against local officials, including district attorneys, who refuse to prosecute criminal offenses in their jurisdiction, specifically DAs in liberal jurisdictions. Criminally punish abortion providers who distribute abortion pills through the mail to patients in need of reproductive health care. Shift responsibility for prosecuting election-related offenses from DOJ's Civil Rights Division to the Criminal Division, which, according to the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights and Human Rights, will open the door to sham investigations and aggressive prosecution of voters and election officials, and serve to intimidate state and local election workers already under threat and could criminalize election administration disputes. We could go on. This is the true weaponization of the federal government, and this is what we should be addressing today. But what are we doing here today in a subcommittee? 46 days before the most consequential election, we're holding yet another hearing in which my Republican colleagues will try to advance conspiracy theories about the DOJ and the FBI. Let me state plainly, contrary to what you will hear from my counterparts today, there is no conspiracy in the whole of the FBI to root out conservatives in that agency. What we do have is sustained campaign pushed forward by a single entity and a group of disgruntled former FBI employees who are known to have committed to attacking, smearing, and degrading career civil servants. So why are we having the hearing? Why have we had all of these hearings? What is the point of this subcommittee? Because it's necessary for the public and the media to hear, to try, and provide cover for the eradication of the Department of Justice and the FBI. We are having these hearings so that you become immune. You become inured to the notion of the removal of the FBI and DOJ, so that those agencies are no longer there to serve as a check against white nationalism, great replacement theorists, Christian nationalists, white fragility, fascists, and the twice impeached convicted felon, former president and would-be dictator, Donald Trump.
About how the FBI weaponized the security clearance process to retaliate against me for protected whistleblower activity. In late 2021, I raised concerns about the FBI director's testimony about the January 6th Capitol riot, not out of political motivation, but out of a duty to truth and integrity. This act, which I believe to be in the spirit of transparency and accountability, led to unexpected and severe consequences. Almost exactly 3 years ago today, I forwarded news articles to my superiors and others within the FBI about January 6th. It was literally one of my job duties to keep my colleagues informed about open source intelligence related to their cases. As a result of simply doing my job, the FBI accused me of promoting conspiratorial views and unreliable information. The FBI questioned my allegiance to the United States, suspended my security clearance, suspended my pay, and refused to allow me to obtain outside employment or even accept charity. This once storied institution, whose initials ironically stand for fidelity, bravery, and integrity, was punishing me for bravely challenging their integrity while they questioned my fidelity. The suspension ultimately lasted for 27 months. During that time, the FBI held my family and me in indefinite limbo, awaiting a final decision. Determined to not lose our home, my wife and I took early withdrawals from our retirement accounts to survive. It became clear that the FBI, with endless resources, the American people's money, was trying to destroy me financially so that I would give up. This is a fear of countless potential whistleblowers who see the personal cost of integrity. There are no words strong enough to describe the impact the FBI's lies about me have had on me and my family. The stress has taken a toll on our health, and our children have suffered, traumatized by the thought of our door getting kicked in or dad not coming home. The battle for truth and justice will cost you, but the arduous good is worth it. The FBI's restoration of my clearance earlier this year, thanks to the efforts of Empower Oversight and the American Center for Law and Justice, was absolute vindication. It's a point I would not have reached without the prior help of Bigley-Ranish and Judicial Watch. However, the experience is also a stark reminder of the system's flaws. It took legal battles, public scrutiny, and patience over 3 long years. No other FBI whistleblower has ever had his clearance restored as I did. Garrett O'Boyle and his family are still suffering in the same limbo we were, with no access to due process and no limit on the FBI's ability to delay and avoid independent accountability. How many other whistleblowers remain silent, fearing the same ordeal my family and Garrett's family faced with little hope of vindication at the end? Despite the stress and uncertainty, I've never once regretted standing up for truth. In fact, I'm grateful for the experience. Indeed, my family and I persevered due to our strength and faith, God's grace, and the sacraments. If you do not worship God, then you will worship something else. You can either serve God or you can serve mammon, but you can't serve both. This has been a purification. While we lost material items, we gained more important things. We've stored up for ourselves treasures in heaven. What we have gained spiritually has far outweighed what was lost materially. John Adams noted that the framework of our country was built for a moral and religious people, and unfit for the governance of any other. James Madison notes the duty to honor God is precedent, both in order of time and degree of obligation to the claims of civil society. Before any man can be considered as a member of civil society, he must be considered as a subject of the governor of the universe. I recently learned about comments made by Mr. Jeffrey Veltri suggesting I was delusional for believing in and seeking guidance from the Holy Spirit. Mr. Veltri currently serves as special agent in charge of the Miami field office, but at the time he was an executive at Security Division overseeing security clearance decisions. To Mr. Veltri, I say you can insult me, but you should not mock God. It is an insult to the infinite dignity of God, who is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and it is bad for the health of your soul. This isn't about me, it's bigger. I am hopeful that the truth of what happened will be fully revealed and deter the FBI from doing the same injustice to others. Though the path may be difficult, I must plead with other employees who have witnessed wrongdoing that they find the courage to speak up. You're not alone, nor will you ever be. Psalm 139 says, "Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence?" I've been blessed to be supported by God's sanctifying grace, the blessed sacrament, men and women of goodwill, other whistleblowers, the charity of the American people, prayers, and great attorneys along the way, Like Tristan and Jason of Empower Oversight, potential whistleblowers, please do not be silenced by the FBI's mistreatment. We are all here to support you if you choose to come forward. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Equally important is the awareness and involvement of the American people. This is your country. While I feel vindicated now in getting back my security clearance, it is sad that in the country for which I fought as a Marine, the FBI was allowed to lie about my loyalty to the United States for 3 years. Unless there is accountability, it will keep happening to others. Better oversight and changes to security clearance laws are key to stopping the abuses suffered by whistleblowers like me. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Peace and all good.
Each one of you, thank you for expressing your ideas and your thoughts. I did want to ask some follow-up questions, though, to some of those. Mr. Inspector General Horowitz, my colleagues across the aisle have said that the Inspector General found that the FBI intentionally weaponizing the security clearance process to purge conservatives from its ranks. Mr. Inspector General, did your office find that the FBI has a pattern or practice of misusing the security clearance adjudication process to purge certain FBI employees?
We have not made such a finding.
Okay. And also, there were allegations made that the FBI has weaponized this, any findings that it was related specifically to individuals who might have expressed sentiments with regard to January 6th. Did you find that?
We haven't made such a finding. We've actually, Congresswoman, had complaints come in from both sides on these issues. On one side, complaints about field offices not taking action in January 6 cases, and on the other side, complaints about offices that did take matters in January 6 cases.
So as usual, it's across the board of the political
We have
spectrum.
complaints from whistleblowers on both sides on that issue.
And that is par for the course you have found in the FBI and in your position over hearing from your other Inspector General officers that complaints may come from both sides of the political spectrum.
I've certainly seen, with regard to the DOJ law enforcement components, issues coming from various perspectives. I will say non-ideological, ideological complaints across.
What about religious? Have you made any findings that the FBI security clearance process targets Christians?
We've not made such a finding.
Or targeting military veterans?
We've not made such a finding.
Thank you. You know, I understand my colleagues' concern that it would appear that Democrats are not taking the issue of whistleblowers seriously. And I think we do. We have a committee for that, the Oversight Committee, for which when I was a member of the Oversight, that's when I first met Mr. Horowitz, was in having oversight over different agencies and questioning you about some of your findings there, some of which, when I first came to Congress, were targeted against a Democratic administration, at the time, the Obama administration. We've gone through a Trump administration, we're now in a Biden administration, and so the vagaries of political persuasion, you've seen them all. But I think the reason that the Democratic members have been bringing up Project 2025 and President Trump is because it presents a global threat, a true weaponization of offices and of a position against the American people as a whole. We see places like North Korea, Hungary, Iran, now Venezuela, where those citizens could not have imagined 20, 30 years before, potentially, that they are living under a dictatorial rule. I went to school with individuals, I'm dating myself, in the early 80s with students who had fled Iran. I have been around young people in undergrad who have fled North Korea. And the notion that anything like that could happen in this country seems so antithetical to our thinking. But we cannot drop the ball in when we see an individual or a group of individuals who have power trying to take that control. And it is our opinion, many of our opinion, that Trump, for his own purposes, has now joined forces with individuals who have offered Project 2025 as a means to an end for each one of their own desires. I would ask to submit to the record a CNN article, Trump claims not to know who is behind Project 2025. CNN review found at least 140 people who work for him are involved.
Objection.
Thank you. And in this article, and in other places, we will see the nexus of relationships between the president and individuals who have written this. 6 of his former cabinet secretaries, 4 individuals nominated by the former president as ambassadors, his first deputy chief of staff, my former colleague Mark Meadows, and also his longtime advisor, Stephen Miller, who are advising Project 2025. Federal Communications Commissioner under President Trump, Brendan Carr, Lisa Laurenti, who was a delegate to the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, all wrote components of Project 2025. We have the American Accountability Foundation putting together a roster of current federal workers it suspects could impede Trump's plan for a second term. I would direct your attention to what we have up there on the screen, which shows so many associates who have, in fact, contributed to the transitional plan for a presidential Trump next term that are part of his orbit. Paul Dance, top official in Trump's White House. We have Ben Carson, former HUD secretary. Christopher Miller, acting Secretary of Defense. Peter Navarro wrote a section defending the former president's trade policies. This has been drafted as the next conservative president's last opportunity. The last opportunity for what? Not the America we know now, a different form of America, one that meets the demands of specific individuals, not all of us. One women that does not include us having complete autonomy of ourselves. One that puts a form of Christianity that may not be my form of Christianity. That's why we have a separation of church and state, so that we can all worship our God as we wish. That's not what Project 2025 is looking towards. Today you may be part of it. Tomorrow you may not be. Today it may help you. Tomorrow it may not. I know I'm on the front line. I know my community's on the front line, but tomorrow it may be yours. Next week, next month, 180 days he's given himself. 2 years from now, it may be your son, your daughter, pointing in the military, pointing a weapon at their fellow citizen, at their brother or their sister who are protesting on the streets of America. Because yes, in Project 2025, it allows the president to direct the active military to come to the streets of the United States against those that he deems as political rivals. That's in Project 2025. Those are the things that are in there against us as Americans. And that's the reason why, Mr. Chairman, we keep talking about it. Not because whistleblowers' issues are not unimportant, but because this is a clear and present threat right now to the American people that we need to join forces with and stop. So I want to thank you for the additional time. And while we're on the recess, God bless you and your family.
You too.
And
You too.
I pray safety for all of us as members, all of people who have spoken out, and individuals we may not agree with one another. But I pray that this election goes safely and that we are all back here again to continue the people's business.